Kimberly. This is a disaster. The materials that Sarah prepared have been tampered with, and if we leave it like this, the deal will fall through. Please do something. Stephen was seen rushing to the manager, Kimberly's desk, pleading with her. His face was pale, and he looked desperate. Kimberly, too, widened her eyes and opened her mouth as if to say, "This can't be true." Ah, that's right. Today was the day when the CEO of World Bay Corporation, Lewis, was visiting. The negotiation was supposed to be handled by Sarah, but it seems Stephen was also present as support. This deal is projected to bring in $100 million, the highest revenue our company has ever seen. If it falls through, it would be a catastrophe for the company. What are you talking about? We checked the materials thoroughly yesterday, didn't we? There's no way they could have been tampered with. Double check it. Kimberly tried to calm Stephen down as she said this. But Stephen, still frantic, insisted, "I've checked it multiple times, and the original materials are nowhere to be found. All we have are the tampered ones. Go and get Sarah. Get her here now. Sarah is explaining the situation to Lewis and can't leave her seat." Kimberly sighed, "There's no choice then. I won't forgive you all later for making me handle this." With that, Kimberly headed to the conference room with Stephen. Left alone in the office, I began to worry that things had taken a serious turn. Just then, I was startled when Simon, the department head, called out to me from behind, saying, "What's going on?" "Simon. How long have you been here?" "I just arrived." "It looks like something serious is going on?" As usual, Simon seemed unruffled as he spoke to me. Given the gravity of the situation, I explained. "The CEO of World Bay Corporation, Lewis, is here for negotiations, but it seems the materials Sarah prepared have been tampered with. And the negotiation is stalling." Stephen called Kimberly for help, and now she's gone to the conference room. Before I could finish, Simon said, "Kimberly can't handle this. You should go help them, Kyle." I was shocked. "Me? Are you serious?" "Yes, you can handle this, can't you?" I didn't know what gave Simon such confidence, but he wasn't wrong. I was sure I could get us out of this mess. "Understood." Without hesitation, I said this and knocked on the conference room door before entering. Inside, Kimberly was desperately trying to explain the situation to Lewis, Sarah looked on the verge of tears, and Stephen was helplessly panicking. "Oh no! What are you saying? With that explanation, we can't proceed with the deal. I'm going to have to call this off," Lewis declared. The situation was dire. Amidst the chaos, Kimberly noticed me and said something like this. "Kyle. Why are you coming in now? This is a critical moment. You'll mess everything up. Go and make another pot of coffee, quickly." Kimberly ordered me with a furious look. Then, from behind me, Simon spoke up. "You're the one who should make the coffee, Kimberly. Leave the negotiation to Kyle." "What? No. I'm sorry, but Simon, Kyle is the most incompetent employee in our department. I can't agree with you on entrusting this crucial negotiation to him." Kimberly tried to calm herself as she said this. But Simon, in a rare stern tone, said, "Kimberly, this isn't a suggestion. It's an order. Comply immediately." Kimberly couldn't argue with that, and though clearly dissatisfied, she glared at me as she stepped back. "I apologize for the disturbance. My name is Simon, the department head. I'm deeply sorry for showing you such an unprofessional scene. Kyle here will take over as the lead on this negotiation. He is an excellent employee who graduated from Harvard." Simon quickly approached Lewis and handed over his business card. Kimberly shouted, "What?" Stephen followed with a shocked, "Huh? Indeed. Kyle, you do seem like a sharp guy. I think I can trust you to continue this conversation." After exchanging business cards with Simon, Lewis extended his hand to me for a handshake. Kimberly and Stephen's astonished faces caught my eye. Well, ignoring them, I quickly approached Lewis, shook his hand, saying, "Thank you," and took a seat next to Sarah. "My name is Kyle. I'm 30 years old and in my 5th year as a working professional. I work for a major jewelry manufacturing company. Although it's my 5th year in the workforce, I've only been with this company for 2 months. I had some doubts about my previous company and was looking for a new job when, by chance, the current company's CEO, Mr. Kennedy, who happens to know my uncle, gave me a referral, and I joined through a mid-career hire. Coincidentally, the Overseas Business Promotion Department was established at the same time I joined. And a few members from the Domestic Sales Department were assigned to this new department, including myself. The department manager is Kimberly, a woman about 10 years older than me. There's also Sarah, a senior employee who's a year older than me and has been working at this company since she graduated. And then there's Stephen, who's technically my junior with 2 years of work experience. But he's been with the company longer since he joined right after college. These are the people I usually work with, but 2 of them have a knack for looking down on me, which makes things a bit troublesome. Those 2 are Kimberly and Stephen. Sarah, the senior who's 1 year older, is a kind and considerate woman, well liked by employees in other departments. And I was captivated by her charm on my first day at the company. Plus, she's beautiful. I can't imagine Sarah looking down on anyone, and it seems completely out of character for her, both in the past and likely in the future. On the other hand, the other 2. They lack even a fraction of Sarah's charm, so much so that I wish they could learn a thing or 2 from her. First, there's Kimberly. She's a genius at being intimidating and making snide remarks. I heard from employees in other departments that she was disliked by everyone in the sales department before she came to our team. On my first day, when I greeted her with a cheerful "nice to meet you," she just ignored me. I wondered if she might be hard of hearing, so I tried again, louder and closer, but she still ignored me, even when our eyes met. As I stood there, a bit confused, Stephen, who had been watching, whispered to me, "Don't worry about it. Kimberly is like that with everyone. That's why no one likes her." I see, there are people like that sometimes, so I didn't let it bother me too much, knowing there are all kinds of people in the world. However, what surprised me was that Stephen, who had given me this advice, also turned out to have a problematic personality. I was curious about the new employee coming in, but it turns out he's useless. I hate that they put someone incompetent in our department when we're already busy. I asked Kimberly about Kyle's academic background. And she didn't know. He's definitely just a high school grad. I'll use polite language since he's technically older, but I've been here longer. So I'm going to boss him around and make his life miserable. I overheard Stephen saying this to a colleague in the break room shortly after I joined. Well, whatever. At least I have Sarah, my only source of comfort and motivation, with her smile. "Stephen, you forgot to clean the coffee maker again." The morning after I joined, Kimberly's shrill voice echoed through the office. "Sorry. But Kyle took over the coffee duties from yesterday, so it's not my fault." Stephen hurriedly made this excuse. Getting scolded first thing in the morning. Kimberly seems to have mood swings. Poor guy. I thought to myself as I was reading the company manual and loading necessary data onto my computer. When I suddenly realized, wait. Did Stephen just mention my name? I looked up. "Kyle. You said you'd take over the task, but you're all talk, aren't you? Useless from day one. What was Mr. Kennedy thinking when he hired you mid-career?" Kimberly shouted angrily. It seems her anger had now turned towards me. But I had no recollection of Stephen asking me to take over the coffee duties, nor had I offered to do so. This was completely false. As I was about to argue back, Stephen quickly said, "Kimberly, I'll go to the break room with Kyle and show him how to make coffee properly." And before I knew it, he was dragging me off to the break room. Hey, why did you lie? I never agreed to take over the coffee duties. Come on, it's no big deal. We help each other out when needed, right? Stephen replied, trying to brush it off. I thought it was a bit sad that he had been Kimberly's underling and probably bullied before I came along. Fine, whatever. I'll make the coffee every morning if it helps. Thanks, appreciate it. Stephen said dismissively as he left me alone in the break room and hurried back to his desk. I thought, seriously, but let it go. I didn't need any instructions on how to use the coffee maker, and finding the coffee grounds in the cupboard was easy enough. So there was no issue. Since Kimberly seemed to be waiting for today's coffee, I brewed it and brought it to everyone. Kimberly took her coffee with a sullen expression, without even a thank you, still as cold and distant as ever. For a moment, I thought it might be amusing if she was just hiding her embarrassment. But even if that were the case, I doubt I'd ever find Kimberly likable. In contrast, Sarah's graceful demeanor and perfect thoughtfulness made all the unpleasantness fade away just by watching her. Thank you. If you're ever busy or feeling overwhelmed, please let me know, and I'll be happy to take over. Sarah said this when I handed her the coffee. Is she an angel? No, a goddess. I almost said it out loud but managed to hold back. It was endearing that she spoke to me, her junior, with such polite language. In fact, I wouldn't mind if Sarah were to say something mean to me. I couldn't help but smile at my silly fantasy. But it turns out, I wasn't the only one who admired Sarah. And the person who did was closer than I expected. It happened about a month after I joined the company. We received news of the largest potential client since the establishment of the Overseas Business Promotion Department. An overseas jewelry retailer called World Bay Corporation was considering placing a substantial order for our high-priced jewelry. If successful, it would bring in about $100 million in sales. Until now, our company mainly dealt with domestic clients, but this deal was on a scale that was incomparable in both unit price and order quantity. This is exactly the kind of success we were aiming for with the overseas business promotion. Push forward and secure the contract. Simon, the department head, said with a smile as he spoke to Kimberly at her desk. It's just a lead that the domestic sales team handed over to us, so Kimberly didn't contribute at all. Stephen muttered quietly, so Kimberly wouldn't hear. After Simon left, Kimberly looked around at the three of us and said, "This is a deal we absolutely cannot afford to lose. And of course, Sarah, you're the only one I can trust with this. I'm counting on you." Sarah responded in a soft voice, "Understood. I'll send you the details by email later. The COO, Mr. Lewis, is coming to Japan soon, so prepare the materials for the negotiation by then." "I'm counting on you." Kimberly said that and then immediately headed out for lunch during the break. Is Kimberly really not going to do anything herself? Stephen grumbled as he walked over to Sarah and said, "Sarah, I'll help with anything you need. Let's work hard together." "Thank you. There are some things I can't handle on my own, so I'll rely on you when I need help." After Sarah replied so, she turned to me and said, "Kyle, I might need to ask you for help too when things get tough. I appreciate it in advance." "Of course. Anytime." Before I could say it, Stephen chimed in, No, Sarah. You shouldn't rely on Kyle. He's a useless high school grad with an unknown academic background. I graduated from K University, so I'm more reliable." "Don't say things like that, Stephen." "But it's the truth," Stephen said. Not wanting to engage in a pointless argument in front of Sarah, I chose to stay silent and said nothing more. From that point on, Stephen kept offering to help Sarah with everything, even suggesting, "If you're free tonight, how about we grab a drink? You can talk to me about anything." Stephen's simple-minded nature made his feelings for Sarah quite obvious. To be fair, you could say he was direct or just honest. Sarah always declined Stephen's invitations to drink, so I figured she probably had a boyfriend. Once, as a joke, I said, "I'll join you guys for a drink too, Stephen." But she immediately shut me down with, "Oh, that's a no-go." And so, the date of Lewis's visit was set for about a month later. Sarah gathered all the necessary materials, including specs of our jewelry, production timelines, and other relevant data, translating everything into English for the negotiation. Kimberly had told her, "Lewis is apparently fluent in Japanese, so you don't need to stress over the English." But Sarah responded, "Yes, but I think it's always better to communicate as much as possible in the client's native language for better results." At the same time, other international deals started coming in for the Overseas Business Promotion Department. Though they weren't as significant, Stephen and I were both assigned other tasks and stayed busy every day. Then, one day, after several hectic weeks had passed, I had been out of the office for meetings both that day and the previous day, spending my time outside the company. After successfully finishing the meeting and returning to the office, I heard Stephen frantically exclaiming, "Kimberly! This is terrible. The materials Sarah prepared have been tampered with, and if this continues, the deal will fall apart." Please, do something. I saw him pleading with Kimberly as he rushed to her desk. His face was pale, and he looked desperate. Kimberly also looked shocked, her eyes wide as if she wanted to say, "This can't be true." Ah, so today was the day Lewis, the CEO of our major client, World Bay Corporation, was visiting. The negotiation was supposed to be handled by Sarah, but it seems Stephen was also present as support. This deal was expected to bring in $100 million, the highest revenue in our company's history. If it falls through, it would be a disaster for the company. What are you talking about? We thoroughly checked the materials yesterday, didn't we? There's no way they could have been tampered with. Double check it. Kimberly tried to calm Stephen down as she said this. But Stephen, still frantic, insisted, "I've checked it multiple times, and the original materials are nowhere to be found. All we have are the tampered ones. Go and get Sarah. Get her here now. Sarah is explaining the situation to Lewis and can't leave her seat." Kimberly sighed, "There's no choice then. I won't forgive you all later for making me handle this." With that, Kimberly headed to the conference room with Stephen. Left alone in the office, I began to worry that things had taken a serious turn. Just then, I was startled when Simon, the department head, called out to me from behind, saying, "What's going on?" "Simon, how long have you been here?" "I just arrived." "It looks like something serious is going on?" As usual, Simon seemed unruffled as he spoke to me. Given the gravity of the situation, I explained. "The CEO of World Bay Corporation is here for negotiations, but it seems the materials Sarah prepared have been tampered with. And the negotiation is stalling." Stephen called Kimberly for help, and now she's gone to the conference room. Before I could finish, Simon said, "Kimberly can't handle this. You should go help them, Kyle." I was shocked. "Me? Are you serious?" "Yes, you can handle this, can't you?" I didn't know what gave Simon such confidence, but he wasn't wrong. I was sure I could get us out of this mess. "Understood." Without hesitation, I said this and knocked on the conference room door before entering. Inside, Kimberly was desperately trying to explain the situation to Lewis, Sarah looked on the verge of tears, and Stephen was helplessly panicking. "Oh no! What are you saying? With that explanation, we can't proceed with the deal. I'm going to have to call this off," Lewis declared. The situation was dire. Amidst the chaos, Kimberly noticed me and said this. "Kyle, why are you coming in now? This is a critical moment. You'll mess everything up. Go and make another pot of coffee, quickly." Kimberly ordered me with a furious look. Then, from behind me, Simon spoke up. "You're the one who should make the coffee, Kimberly. Leave the negotiation to Kyle." "What? No. I'm sorry, but Simon, Kyle is the most incompetent employee in our department. I can't agree with you on entrusting this crucial negotiation to him." Kimberly tried to calm herself as she said this. But Simon, in a rare stern tone, said, "Kimberly, this isn't a suggestion. It's an order. Comply immediately." Kimberly couldn't argue with that and, though clearly dissatisfied, she glared at me as she stepped back. "I apologize for the disturbance. My name is Simon, the department head. I'm deeply sorry for showing you such an unprofessional scene. Kyle here will take over as the lead on this negotiation. He is an excellent employee who graduated from Harvard." Simon quickly approached Lewis and handed over his business card. Kimberly shouted, "What?" Stephen followed with a shocked, "Huh? Indeed. Kyle, you do seem like a sharp guy. I think I can trust you to continue this conversation." After exchanging business cards with Simon, Lewis extended his hand to me for a handshake. I noticed the astonished faces of Kimberly and Stephen. Ignoring their reactions, I quickly approached Lewis, shook his hand, and said, "Thank you," before taking a seat next to Sarah. Stephen shot me a look that seemed to say, "What the heck is going on?" Simon, with an unusually serious expression, whispered in my ear, "Kyle, I know you understand the importance of this deal for our company. Now is the time to show us what you're capable of," and then he smiled. I replied, "Understood," took a deep breath, and began speaking to Lewis in fluent English. Kimberly and Stephen stared at me, wide-eyed and open-mouthed. I explained to Louis in English that there had been an unfortunate mistake with the materials and offered my sincere apologies. Speaking in his native language seemed to improve Louis's mood. Then, I took the opportunity to whisper to Sarah. Please check if you can find the correct data that wasn't tampered with. I'll keep the conversation going in the meantime. Stephen has been searching, but he couldn't find it. Also, the shared folder where the deleted data should be isn't accessible. Sarah replied, almost in tears. You can access the executive-only folder from this company laptop. Try searching from here. I quickly said this and handed her my laptop. Sarah, though surprised, responded with a hesitant huh, but followed my instructions, understanding the urgency of the situation. Kyle. I found it. The correct materials I created are in the executive folder. A few moments later, I heard Sarah's excited voice. Great. Print them out quickly and let's hand them to Louis. Yes. Sarah hurried off to the copier, looking relieved. Looks like we're solving the problem, Kyle. You're incredible. A truly excellent employee. With you here, I feel confident we can proceed smoothly. Louis complimented me after observing my exchange with Sarah. Kimberly, while somewhat relieved, still had a complex expression on her face. After a while, Sarah returned with the correct materials. Louis seemed satisfied with the updated negotiation documents that Sarah had meticulously prepared in English. In the end, Louis agreed to finalize the deal successfully. After the negotiation concluded and we saw Louis out, we all returned to our desks. But I could feel Kimberly and Stephen glancing at me with looks that suggested they had something to say. Kimberly was the first to speak up. Kyle. If you're fluent in English, you should have told us from the start. You made me look like a fool. What were you thinking? And what's this about Harvard? Simon was lying. What are we going to do if Louis finds out later? Exactly, Kyle. Even if you bailed us out, it just made us look bad. Stephen jumped in, venting his frustration. I had no intention of making you look bad. I just wanted to save the company from a crisis. And by the way, I really did graduate from Harvard. I replied honestly. Then Sarah immediately stood up, saying, if it weren't for Kyle, the $100 million deal would have fallen through. I can't thank you enough. I'm truly sorry for my mistake, everyone. Sarah, it wasn't your fault. It was clearly someone's tampering. You're the victim here, so you don't need to apologize. I hurriedly reassured her. Stephen chimed in, yes, exactly. Sarah isn't at fault. And Kyle, stop lying about your education. Sarah was on the verge of tears. Meanwhile, Kimberly was fuming, exclaiming, ugh. This is too much. Just stop dragging me into all this. At that moment, I heard the door open with a click. Mr. Kennedy. Standing there was President, Mr. Kennedy. I've heard about the trouble you all faced, but it seems you've managed to secure the contract. I appreciate your efforts. Thank you. Mr. Kennedy said, to which Kimberly quickly replied, not at all. I'll make sure nothing like this ever happens again. Upon hearing this, Sarah immediately stood up and apologized. I'm deeply sorry. Sarah. It wasn't your fault. You don't need to apologize. I've already looked into the matter. It turns out an employee from another department in sales was responsible. We found out by checking the computer records. Unfortunately, that employee has been terminated. Tampering with crucial negotiation materials is a serious offense, and it's a criminal act. So don't worry, Sarah. You did nothing wrong. Upon hearing that from Mr. Kennedy, Sarah said, thank you so much. Mr. Kennedy continued. We'll be reviewing our security protocols, and tomorrow we'll revise the data management rules and share them company-wide. Once the notice comes out, please make sure to go through it. And, Kyle. Yes. I responded hastily, caught off guard by the sudden mention of my name. You really saved us this time. I've heard from Simon that you're not only excellent at crisis management but also have outstanding English communication skills. I knew your uncle when he introduced you to join our company, but now I realize just how fortunate we are to have such an exceptional employee. We've just established the Overseas Business Promotion Department, and I expect we'll be relying on your abilities moving forward. Naturally, your position and compensation will be adjusted accordingly. So, anyone who hinders your work will be considered as obstructing the company's business, and they will face appropriate consequences. Mr. Kennedy said this while staring directly at Kimberly and then glancing at Stephen. Mr. Kennedy? May I ask, is it really true that Kyle graduated from Harvard? In response to Kimberly's question, Mr. Kennedy looked over at me. Mr. Kennedy, since I'm no longer keeping it a secret, it's fine to confirm it. With a smile, Mr. Kennedy replied, yes, it's true, Kimberly. Later that evening, Kimberly and Stephen, seemingly more exhausted than usual, left the office promptly at closing time. As I was tidying up to leave, Simon patted me on the shoulder and said, "Good job today. How about grabbing a drink?" It was a rare invitation, so I was delighted and quickly responded, "I'd love to." Sarah was still in the office as well. "Sarah, why don't you join us?" Simon invited Sarah, and the three of us decided to go out together. We left the office, took a backstreet, and entered a stylish little restaurant that Simon frequented. Among my supervisors, I had a particularly high regard for Simon. He's about 10 years older than me, a gentleman with a soft demeanor. He's mild-mannered and well-liked by everyone. But when it matters, he doesn't hesitate to take charge, and he's very capable at his job. I was also thrilled at the prospect of having dinner with Sarah after work for the first time. Though she had mentioned being a light drinker, she blushed as she sipped her first beer, looking utterly adorable. It felt a bit disrespectful to describe a senior colleague as cute, but that's exactly what she was. Today, the company was saved, thanks to both of you. I wanted to express my gratitude, which is why I invited you out tonight. Simon began, bringing up the day's events. Any work-related data is designed to be temporarily stored in a separate folder if deleted. Only a limited number of executives can access that folder, but I had already trusted Kyle enough to grant him access, just in case. That decision paid off today. I heard from Mr. Kennedy that the person responsible for tampering with the materials has been identified. I mentioned, to which Simon nodded and said, "That's right." I thought it was important to inform Sarah as well. The culprit is Emma from the Domestic Business Department. When Simon mentioned the name, Sarah let out a small "oh." "I had my suspicions," she said softly. As it turned out, the issue stemmed from a complicated personal relationship involving Sarah, Emma, and another male employee. Really? Given Sarah's popularity within the company, it wasn't surprising there might be some romantic entanglements, though I was a bit disappointed. But as I listened further, I was relieved to learn that Sarah hadn't actually been involved with anyone. Apparently, Emma, the employee in question, had fallen for Henry, a male colleague in the same department. However, Henry was infatuated with Sarah. Emma, feeling rejected, had lashed out by tampering with the materials in an act of revenge. Sarah had even experienced harassment from Emma before. So, Sarah was completely innocent and just caught up in someone else's mess. I blurted out in frustration. I had always thought that being beautiful was an advantage, but now I realized it could also bring a lot of trouble, and I felt sorry for her. Even so. Sarah, you're such a wonderful person. I imagine you already have someone special in your life, right? I tried to ask casually. Well, it wasn't casual at all, and Simon chuckled at my obviousness. But to my surprise, Sarah immediately responded, "No. I'm not seeing anyone." I couldn't help but exclaim, "Really?" Simon burst into laughter at my reaction. "But having a Harvard graduate join our company, that's something," Simon suddenly remarked. Speaking of which, I was curious about that earlier today as well. Did you know, Simon? I thought only Mr. Kennedy was aware. I asked Simon. When I joined the company, I had, of course, disclosed my educational and work background to Mr. Kennedy. I had specifically asked Mr. Kennedy not to disclose my academic background within the company. Yes, Mr. Kennedy told me that you preferred not to reveal your academic background, but since I'm in a managerial position and someone he trusts, he decided to let me know discreetly. He also mentioned that it would be best not to share it with Kimberly. Simon explained. Why did you want to keep your impressive academic background a secret? Sarah asked curiously. Well, after I graduated from university, I worked at a Japanese company where I didn't hide my education. However, my colleagues would often belittle others by comparing them to me, saying things like, Kyle graduated from Harvard. But you only went to a low-ranked university, so of course, you're not as capable. This caused one of my colleagues to quit. And I started to feel that the focus on my education was creating unnecessary biases. I realized that being labeled as the Harvard grad was causing more harm than good, so I decided to leave that company. When I was offered the position here, I asked Mr. Kennedy to keep my educational background confidential. And because of that, Kimberly and Stephen thought you were just a high school graduate and clearly looked down on you. Simon said with a wry smile. Yes, compared to my previous company, it was interesting to see how differently people treated me based on their assumptions about my education. Instead of feeling frustrated, I actually found it amusing. I replied with a laugh. But you know, Sarah was different. About a month after you joined, I asked her what she thought of the new guy, Kyle. And she said. Simon trailed off with a grin. Stop it, Simon. That's embarrassing. Sarah protested, her face turning bright red. Come on, now that we're here, it's fine. Sarah said with a big smile that Kyle is a kind, considerate, and truly wonderful man. So I said, Sarah. I was asking about him as a colleague, not as a man, and when she turned red, I asked, do you like him? Simon continued. Wait, what happened next? When he asked, do you like him? I was dying to know how Sarah responded. But Simon stopped the story right there. Before I could ask for the rest of the story, I realized that it was up to me to express my feelings to Sarah. Understanding Simon's unspoken message. 2 months later. My work in the Overseas Business Promotion Department had been recognized, so I was promoted to manager. Kimberly, who had been notorious among the staff for doing little work and being overly bossy, was demoted from her managerial role and reassigned to product management as a regular employee. Stephen, who had toned down his arrogant attitude since I became manager, continued to work in the same department under my supervision. However, he wasn't exactly friendly towards me. In a way, I understand it's inevitable. Not only did my quick promotion to manager bother Stephen, but there was also another reason that absolutely irritated him. Kyle, what should we have for dinner tonight? On our way home from work, while waiting on the train platform, Sarah clung to my arm and leaned in close as she asked. Sarah, we might run into someone from the company here, so maybe we shouldn't be holding hands. I suggested, somewhat concerned. Why not? We're not doing anything wrong. Besides, everyone at the office already knows we're dating, she replied cheerfully. But I'm a bit worried about how the guys who liked you might react. I made a somewhat joking but hesitant remark. Sarah clenched her fist with determination and said, if anyone tries to mess with you, I'll protect you with everything I've got. Her fierce determination was so endearing that I released her arm, only to take her hand in mine, and together we boarded the train. Sarah and I had started dating and quickly decided to move in together. I felt a deep sense of gratitude for having found a partner I could truly trust. I wanted to cherish the people who believed in me for who I was, not for my titles. I would work hard and make her happy. As I looked at an ad for a wedding venue inside the train, I mentally pumped myself up with a firm alright. What do you mean by alright? Sarah asked me. I replied, oh. I just made a little resolution. To which Sarah responded, then should we have something energizing for dinner? Feeling even happier, I laughed and said, let's do that.